Alexandra Hunt, candidate for Congress in Pennsylvania's 3rd District. Alexandra, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's just go through your platform a little bit here. Medicare for all, Green New Deal, ending cash bail, your pro-wealth tax, housing as a human right, protecting tribal sovereignty. I guess I don't have to ask you if you consider yourself a progressive.
No.
No.
The details.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, what inspired you to run for Congress?
The inspiration actually came out of a lot of community pain when the pandemic first struck. The lack of proper response and resources that we got to the ground into the community in PA3 in Philadelphia was heartbreaking and completely unacceptable. And so it was really, our lines were just far too long. And that was what inspired me to run to try to change that.
And you have like a personal story that I know the New York Post ran with. We actually covered it on the show. The fact that you went to college, your parents were teachers, you racked up some student debt, and you had to work your way through college. That's or I'm sorry if I'm characterizing it incorrectly, but you had to work in terms of like all the student debt that you'd accrued. The New York Post ran with the fact that you had worked as a stripper before and clutched their pearls about how outrageous it was. And we read this article on air, and everything that you were saying in it was just completely common sense. Can you talk a little bit about the reaction to your campaign and really, I guess, your story in that area? Yeah. Go ahead.
So I worked in college, and I actually started out and continued in the restaurant business, and I was working as a server, but I was working on campus at our only bar on campus, and I wasn't being treated super well by my peers. They kind of looked down at folks who had to work throughout school. And 2, I just wasn't making enough money there for it to be substantive to paying my bills and buying books and normal expenses that you have as a student. So I started to look for other ways to make good money. And it dawned on me that I've heard you can make a lot of money as a stripper. And so I started to look into that and started to work at a club. And that was, I did make good money. I also learned a lot about how to raise money, which is something that we're proving we're doing very well on the campaign trail. So there is a transferable skill set from stripping to running for office. And I think that they tried to shame me for it. And they just took an angle that we pretty much inoculated ourselves against by being forthcoming with this fact that, yes, I worked as a stripper, and that doesn't make me any less of a candidate.
Right. And I appreciate how you kind of owned it, and you talked about how you would not be a corporate whore, essentially, or well, I forget the exact phrasing of the shirt. But it's pretty great to get out ahead of it because, like, papers like that will try to run with the scandalous headline when the real scandal, obviously, is that a significant majority of our elected representatives do not respond to their constituents. They respond to the people that pay for them. And of course, you're not taking any corporate donations. So can you talk a little bit about that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think that so the phrase is, I may have danced for money, but I'm no corporate whore. And that's the t-shirt and sweatshirt that we've been running with. And the basis of that is we're a fully grassroots campaign. We're only taking money from everyday people. And while we've raised over $500,000 with over 9,000 donors, our average contribution is $36. And it shows that we are backed by the community. We're a working campaign, and that we're making honest money. Whereas my opponent is one of the majority in the Democratic Party for taking corporate money, and has almost boastfully said in interviews that he only answers to his donors. He only answers to his corporate donors, and that's how the people who put him in that seat. And that leads to deep neglect and a lack of resources in the community, which is what inspired me to run in the first place.
Right. So talk a little bit more about your opponent. Dwight Evans, you're primarying him. What are some of the positions that he holds that are contrary to the ones that you're running on?
For starters, overturning Citizens United is an important piece, and if that happens, he won't be able to have a campaign because he doesn't know how to run with the community support, only the establishment support. In terms of environmental justice and climate action, he does not support the Green New Deal. And you can follow the money trail and see that he's personally invested in the fossil fuel industry and ExxonMobil. For universal health care, which is something that we absolutely need, especially in the middle of a pandemic. He's backed by private health insurance companies and big pharma and cannot support Medicare for all because of that. With education reform, something that I'm very passionate about because of my parents being teachers and that I know this is the pathway to opportunity for young people. He has defunded our public schools and founded his own charter school. And so it's really just a matter of his stances differ from ours because if you follow the money, that's how he reached his stances.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he founded his own charter school, I mean, that speaks volumes, right? That's not just a policy position that you support. That's something that you're actively doing outside of your elected office position, or that's you're so passionate about defunding public schools that you're doing it yourself. So that does speak volumes. Your districts or your potential districts in Philly, Pennsylvania's 3rd district. You talk on your website about how you're passionate about criminal justice reform. Obviously, the DA in Philly, Larry Krasner, has been aggressive on this front. Where do your positions align with his? And how do you see, if you were to be elected to office, you potentially working with him to make Philly a progressive city in that area, or continue making it that?
If you speak with DA Krasner, he often talks about the limitations of his role and how that has led to a lot of blame for the current state of the district on his shoulders and his office's shoulders. He needs the support of legislation. He believes in second chances, as do I, and he does not have the resources or the legislative support to create compassionate entry programs, which is what people need, because when you are a returning citizen, you come back into everyday life. You might not have a home. Health insurance is incredibly hard to afford. You might not be able to get a job because of the stigma that is associated with it. Who knows what your social support is and your mental health capacity is. And so just you're set up with it's you against the world. And there needs to be programs in place to make reentry possible, to a dignified life possible and probable, and compassionate reentry.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And it's great to hear this rhetoric and like these ideas multiplying in Philly and Philadelphia. We're here in New York, so a few hours away. I'm hoping that more cities start to adopt these stances. But, I said this the other day, I really think progressives need to pay a bit more attention to Pennsylvania, because there's a lot of great progressive candidates like yourself coming out of Pennsylvania right now. We interviewed Summer Lee last week on the show out of Pittsburgh. And of course, we spoke to John Fetterman, I think, last year. Can you talk a bit about what you're seeing in your state in terms of the progressive swell, especially because it's a unique situation there? You have a Democratic governor, a Republican obstructionist legislature that was quick to side with Donald Trump and his lies about the election. And yet, out of all of that, there's some really strong progressive candidates coming out of your state.
Yeah, I think progressive candidates answer to the need of the community, and the need of the community is to have government that works for the people. And so what we're seeing is a lot of posturing on both sides, both the Republican side and the Democratic side, and nothing's getting for the people. And so you have candidates that are born from that frustration and motivated to actually push the Democratic Party, in the direction of working for people. And that's what Summer Lee comes out of. That's what John Fetterman comes out of. I was a supporter of Summer Lee's before she even decided to run for Congress, because she, in the state legislature, which is GOP run, she was willing to be brave enough to push forward a bill. It was unsuccessful, but to decriminalize sex work. So I think she's brave, and I think she's a wonderful candidate. And on top of that, PA3, the district that I'm running in, is the most Democratic district in the nation. So in the role that it plays in Pennsylvania state politics is that it can shift the statewide seats if we get enough people motivated to come out and vote. But people aren't motivated by the status quo. They're not motivated by complacency. So we need to have candidates that motivate people by the tangible differences they'll make in their lives. And that's someone like John Fetterman and like myself running in PA3.
Absolutely. And lastly, I feel that what is making this new crop of progressive candidates strong is the embrace of the labor movement, and how there has been a resurgence in people understanding the value of their labor and the power that they hold. What is your position, and would you support, say, the PRO Act, go even further to support unions if you were elected to office?
Absolutely. I think this whole profit over people stance that we see recurring in several different industries undermines labor. And so absolutely hard support for the PRO Act. The origin of unions is in Philadelphia. So you need the support of the union and the labor movement in order to be able to run. And you can't undermine it by going to corporations that often try to union bust. So heavy support for labor. I consider myself a worker, not a boss. And in our campaign's goal to build an education to opportunity pipeline, that has to be supported by the labor movement.
Well, Alexandra Hunt, Pennsylvania's 3rd District, where can people support you, find out more about your campaign?
You can check us out online at huntforcongress.com, spell everything out. We are on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter, Alexandra Hunt for Congress.
Awesome. Well, and people can buy some of those really cool T-shirts too, if you decide to do so. Sorry if I butchered the tagline on there at first, but I appreciate you clarifying it. Alexandra Hunt, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.